And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona. Now, today, just a little bit of a different show today. Andrew Johnson is here with us today, but is feeling under the weather at the current moment. Kind of sounds like Coach Ed Orgeron. If you hear, you'll get a little bit of a preview later on the show, potentially. So he will chime in here and there when it comes to some of the divisional round games that we saw this past weekend. But joining me on the show today is a reoccurring guest host we've had here on the show, and that is Sean Mulligan. Sean, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy to be here.
Any words from Coach O?
Go Tigers.
There you go. Yeah, so Andrew will chime in here and there. Try not to get his vocal cords up just a little bit, trying to get him a little bit better. Considering what he was yesterday, he does sound a little bit better, so that is good to hear. But like I said, we'll give him a little bit of a break tonight. It'll be Sean and I recapping this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. The divisional round matchups are over. We now know the final four teams going into championship round weekend, and we had some thrilling matchups this past weekend, Sean. And we have a lot to break down going into the weekend. Not only that, also having two new head coaching hires happen this past week. So we'll have to also break that down. Also, still some rumors on some other head coaches potentially filling in their spots. Probably the next couple of days. Most likely will happen after we finish up this recording, because that's usually what happens when it comes to big news here on the All Cast No Break Sports Show. So, Sean, let's go into our first game, and that was between the Texans and the Baltimore Ravens that started off the divisional round weekend. The Texans obviously coming up that big win over the Browns the previous week. A lot of momentum going into this game. Going into Baltimore, the Ravens, as we all know, top seed in the AFC, one of the more dominant teams in all of football. Most likely are the favorites to win the Super Bowl if you had to pick. And it kind of showed in this game. It was a very slow start for Baltimore in the first half. The game went into halftime, tied at 10 apiece. The Texans' only touchdown of this game came on a punt return. The Ravens getting an early touchdown from Lamar Jackson on the ground. But the second half is where Baltimore will come to play. A really strong performance where Lamar Jackson threw two touchdowns, had another rushing touchdown, and their defense shut out the Texans in that second half. They would go on to win this game by a final of 34-10. So Baltimore will host the AFC Championship game next week. It'll be the first time, I think, since 2016, if I'm not mistaken, that it's not going to be an Arrowhead for the AFC title game. So big props to John Harbaugh and his team for what they've done this season. They now get to host the AFC title game next week, and we will preview later on who they will be facing in that AFC Championship game. But, Sean, what did you see from that game between Baltimore and Houston?
Well, firstly, I was a little disappointed. I did want Houston to win. I liked the whole story.
I did too.
I'm still surprised that C.J. Stroud had this kind of season coming out of at a college, but it just shows what Houston has moving forward. You know, they really didn't need to win this game. They've shown that they compete at a high level, and moving forward, I mean, the sky's the limit.
Right.
But as for Baltimore, I mean, what they've done this season is incredible. And you could just add this to the list of defenses that they've had. That I really didn't expect this defense to be this good at the beginning of the year. I think I might have said that on the first pod. I'm not sure, but
you probably did.
But this defense is right up there with that 2000 defense and the 2001, 2002, whatever, on and on. It's incredible what they've done.
Yeah, so we try not to think of that 2000 year because as Giants fans,
I really hate that 2000 year. It really pains me, but that is, and I have said this before, that is the greatest defense I've ever seen play in my entire life as a football fan. That defense was outstanding, and this defense is right up there with it.
Yeah, they have certainly a lot of playmakers on that defense, and they really give C.J. Stroud and company a lot of issues, but. You're absolutely right when it comes to the Texans. They were pretty much playing with house money. They didn't expect to be here at the beginning of the season. And not only did they make the playoffs, but they won the division title even the way the season started for them. It didn't look like they were going to make it at all. Yeah. So kudos to D'Amico Ryan's. Certainly, in my opinion, should win Coach of the Year. They have the quarterback of the future now. I think now really comes down to what you do in the offseason to try to keep this momentum going. They've obviously had offensive line issues going. They had secondary issues most of the time during the end of the season. So I think if they fix two of those things, maybe get another wide receiver for Stroud, they could be right back in the mix next season.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. It's all about coming back and restocking, adding a few weapons here and there, adding some complementary pieces for depth. Things that our team hadn't done after championships, but that's a story for another time.
That's
Um,
another story for a different time.
but that's the name of the game. You just got to keep you got to keep reshuffling the deck. Kansas City has shown they can do it. Baltimore has shown they can do it. New England in years past has showed they can do it. And, it's up to Houston now. They got to show that they can just keep reshuffling the deck and come back again next year.
And they kind of, it's kind of what this next team that we're going to talk about, the San Francisco 49ers, what they've kind of done these last couple of years, where a lot of people have said, another heartbreaking end of the season, maybe, reshuffle the quarterback situation you've got going on. And obviously it did eventually go from, originally it was Garoppolo, then it was Trey Lance, now it's Brock Purdy. So it's been a little bit different changing at quarterback, but the rest of the team as a whole is still pretty much the same exact team that went to the Super Bowl just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And they look to be the favorite in the NFC, but they had a very tough time this past Saturday against the Green Bay Packers. And you got to give the Packers some credit. They were, the last team in. It looked like earlier on they were about I think they were 3-6 at one point in the season. It looked like all hope was lost for them and not going to make the playoffs. They riled off some wins at the end of the year. Were the last team into the playoffs. Embarrassed the Cowboys in the wild card weekend, becoming the first 7 seed to beat a 2 seed in the NFL playoffs. And they gave the 49ers a lot run for their money. A game in which pretty much the Packers should have won, if you think about it.
Oh,
Dropped
absolutely.
interceptions really hurt them. They had some questionable ball placements for the referee, which kind of hurt them in the grand scheme of things in some ways in this game. And obviously, the missed field goal from Anders Carlson was the difference of this game, as the Niners would score a late touchdown in the fourth quarter on a Christian McCaffrey touchdown run with about a minute left. Packers did have an opportunity to go down the field and try to tie the game, but unfortunately, Jordan Love threw an interception. Kind of reminded me, Sean, of the interception we saw Brett Favre throw in that 2009 NFC title game against the Saints when he was on the Vikings.
Yes,
One of
absolutely,
those
100%.
one of those throws where you're running to the right side of the field, you throw it right back into the middle of the field on the run, and he just had no chance to do it. It was in triple coverage, and he got intercepted
Yeah.
by Dre Greenlaw, who had 2 interceptions in this game, played a huge dividend for this Niners defense. As they hold on to win 24-21, they will be going back to the NFC Championship game for the second straight year. And
Mm-hmm.
it was certainly a sweat for this team, and a team that a lot of people expected to cruise by in this game, but they were able to get it done. Purdy was a little shaky at times in this one, but got
Yeah.
it done when it mattered the most in the fourth quarter. A huge late game drive to get them into position to win that game with a touchdown.
Yeah.
He got it done, and the defense did did what they needed to do at the end of the day. They had some problems early on in this game, especially when stopping the run, but they were able to force those turnovers, and they were able to take advantage of the Packers' mistakes, and now they move on to another NFC Championship game.
Yeah. Yeah, Green Bay again, just like the Texans, is another team that I really didn't expect to be here at the beginning of the year, but they kind of surprised me. Maybe even more so than the Texans, uh, uh, in a matter of speaking. Because personally, I mean, I got Jordan Love in my own fantasy league, and I think I've finally solved my quarterback problem. I hope, but
You hope.
um, but I mean, I didn't expect any of this from Green Bay. It looked like Detroit was motoring through that division, and Green Bay kind of surprised me a little bit there at the end of the season, and the same thing as Houston, like we said. You got to be able to come back next year, reshuffle the deck, add a few pieces here and there, maybe add another weapon, some depth on the offensive line.
Safety
Fix
help would be good too.
Safety help would be immensely for them. And come back next year and try to do it again. Same, just like Houston and those other teams. Can they continue to reshuffle the deck and be a fixture in the playoffs?
Right. I think it comes down to the good thing for the Packers is this was obviously a evaluation year because you were trying to see if Jordan Love is that guy for you. And it seems to be that is the case. Love had a really good
Yeah,
regular season, played
absolutely.
phenomenal in that game against the Cowboys. Now, obviously, this game, he had some good plays, but obviously the 2 interceptions, one you can't really fault him for. It was kind of a high throw, so maybe you can fault him a little bit, but
Right.
dig it over of a receiver's hands into Dre Greenlaw's hands, and then the last interception is just a throw you can't make. It's a cardinal sin pretty much of all quarterbacks. You can't really make that type of throw. So
Absolutely.
he still has some things to fix, but it seems that he is the guy for the Packers, which is huge for them going into
Yeah.
this. I don't even want to say rebuild, but retooling maybe of the team now. Obviously, they could use some more wide receivers. You mentioned they had
Right.
Jaden Reed this year, was pretty good for them. Christian Watson's been solid. I think adding another wide receiver would do a lot for them, as well as fixing some of the things on defense. The defense was a
Yeah.
problem for them most of the year, and
100%.
I don't know what they do with Joe Barry, the defensive coordinator. I don't know if they keep him or not at this point. He did have some good moments in this playoff run that maybe kept his job, but I think Green Bay
It's
is
all
tough.
evaluation at the end of the day. You bring him in, you talk to him, and you see where he's at.
Right. So
And
Matt LaFleur and company have a couple things to discuss in the offseason.
yeah, I mean it's all housekeeping. Every team does it. Every team does it, whether they fire the head coach or not. Every team comes in and evaluates their assistants and this, that, and the third. But rarely do we see this happen where you go from a guy like Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan
Potentially
Love.
now Jordan Love, yeah.
You thought you were going to see it with Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. Didn't happen, but you rarely, if ever, see a potential 30-year window at the quarterback window of complete stability. It rarely happens, especially in today's day and age with free agency and all of that. I mean, this is unheard of, the stability that Green Bay has had at quarterback over the last 30 years.
Yeah, especially considering they got clowned for making that pick in the 2020 draft because
Yeah.
obviously Rodgers was coming off, some pretty solid years. And even that year, Rodgers went on to win the MVP. And then he went on to win the MVP the next season. So
I
it
mean,
didn't look like we didn't know what was going to happen with Love.
I personally wasn't surprised because they did that with Aaron Rodgers. He sat for 3 years, the same 3 years that Jordan Love sat for. So, I mean, I personally wasn't surprised because I've always been of the mindset if you know you're going to need a quarterback in a couple of years and you're sitting there and there's a guy that falls to you that you really like, you take him. You sit him, take him, and hope for the best.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see what Green Bay does because they obviously now have a lot more competition in the NFC North. And the biggest reason why being is those Detroit Lions. And we went into Sunday with the first game being the Lions and Buccaneers, knowing that the winner of this game would be going to Santa Clara to take on the Niners for the NFC Championship game. Obviously, another packed environment in Detroit, their second straight home playoff game after going 30-plus years without even hosting one. And they had a little bit of a scare in this one, too. It was a tie game going into halftime, even a tie game going into the fourth quarter. But the Lions in the fourth quarter were able to just pull away from the Buccaneers. They had some big running game from Jahmyr Gibbs, got a couple of decent runs from David Montgomery as well, some catches from him. Laporta, St. Brown, you name it. They had some good catches in the field. And their defense forced a couple interceptions of Baker Mayfield. They had trouble with Mike Evans in this game. Mike Evans had a monster game for Tampa Bay. Rachaad White had a receiving touchdown as well. But Detroit is able to hold on and win this one 31-23. They now go to the NFC title game for the first time, I believe, Sean, since 1991.
Yes.
And they will take on those San Francisco 49ers in the NFC title game.
Yes,
so
their current head coach was still in high school the last time they were in the NFC Championship. I myself was only in the first grade.
It's certainly been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I was obviously not born, so
yes, absolutely.
So it's crazy times to think about how this turnaround's gone for the Lions. Obviously, Dan Campbell was hired, I think, 3 years ago.
Yes.
Last year, they almost made the playoffs. They obviously missed out being one of the final teams in, and they went into the season with a lot of expectations, and rightfully so. They had one of the best records in the NFL, third seed in the NFC this year, and they played pretty solid, did just enough to beat the Rams in the wild card week. Now they did just enough to beat the Buccaneers in the divisional round. They
Yeah.
will have their toughest test this season, obviously, going into next week against the 49ers. But the Lions, again, are pretty much another team that's playing with house money right now. A lot of people were hoping
Yeah.
for this scenario, but they're obviously loving the fact that now they're one win away from going to the first ever Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be, if I was a Lions fan, I'd be stoked. I'd be over the moon. But what Dan Campbell has done there is essentially what every coach wants to do. He's created a culture, that whole the grit. They live by it. It's a culture now. He's created a winning culture. They hoped with guys like Steve Mariucci and a couple of guys like that earlier on when I was in college and high school and stuff, that these guys would turn them from being the perennial doormat of the NFL into what they are. And throughout my life, it's interesting to see how they've gone from just utter disaster to a completely polished football team. If you
Right.
told me this when I was in high school that the Lions would be like that, I'd tell you were nuts, because totally mismanaged from the top down, and it seems as if they fixed that. And I'm hoping that they win, not only because they were one of my picks to go to the Super Bowl at the beginning of the year, so I'm hoping that they win. But and besides my hate from the San Francisco 49ers, I think they're the better team. I really do. I know that it's going to create some flack. I think they're a much better team. And I think they're hungrier than San Francisco. I don't feel that San Francisco is hungry. Green Bay came into San Francisco, they were hungry. They could have picked them off. Certain things happened, whatever, but they were hungry.
Interceptions in that game.
They were hungry. I didn't feel that San Francisco was that hungry. Detroit is hungry. They're feeding, man. I'd like to see them continue moving, and it's keep it simple and follow the same basic plan they've had the whole season. I think Dan Campbell will. He's that type of guy. So be interesting to see what happens.
We know he's a gutsy play call, that's for sure.
Yes,
especially when it comes down to how their offense has played this season. Ben Johnson, we know, has been a hot candidate to become a potential head coach for a numerous amount of teams. So he still has to wait a little bit just to potentially get that opportunity to become a head coach. But the Lions are a hungry team. Obviously, we know in the press conference he said they're going to bite off some kneecaps. They're obviously doing that so far in this entire playoff run. Now one win away from going to their first ever Super Bowl appearance. And you could make the case that they might be they have a really good chance to beat this San Francisco 49ers team, considering how San Francisco, how the Niners played most throughout that game against the Packers. And that's a team the Niners, the Lions, they obviously split the season series with the Packers this year, but that's a team that, if they could study some game film, who knows? Maybe the Lions can pull it off.
Absolutely. And it's the way I look at it is I was one of the guys back in, when Brock Purdy was drafted. I wish that our Giants would have taken a shot on him. I didn't think that he would turn into this.
No one expected this.
It was just hey, maybe he's a guy, you develop him, you flip him for a couple of draft picks. That's kind of what I was
just
looking
irrelevant.
at. But he's even in college, and I'm not sure about his high school career, but in college, he never played in this type of environment.
No.
He was never, he didn't go to one of the big SEC schools. He didn't play that big prime time game,
He was a Iowa State legend.
Yes. Even in the NFL, he didn't play. He wasn't there last year. I think he was hurt last year in the playoffs.
He played a quarter of that NFC Championship game that got hurt.
Yeah. So he's not played in this type of environment. Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl. He's been in these moments before. It sounds weird that I'm going to trust Goff, but Jared Goff is the guy I trust here. He's been there. He knows what to expect. And, that's something that, that's something that's there. There is no Garoppolo. Garoppolo's gone. The guy you could turn to who's been in that situation, he's gone. So, do you trust Brock Purdy? I'm not sure. I don't think he played all that clean of a game last week.
He didn't, but like I said earlier, I think he made the throws that he needed to make when it mattered the most. Because there was a couple of third down conversions on that last drive where if they didn't convert, then it's fourth down and you're giving the Packers an opportunity to win the game right there. And thankfully for the Niners, they were able to convert. in those
Yeah,
situations. But
100%.
yeah, you're right. When it comes to the postseason, it really matters about experience, and golf
I
obviously
mean,
has that experience.
I
Purdy
also
has played a
think,
couple games, but not to
yeah,
this NFC Championship matter where he has to play
right.
now. Hopefully, for his sake, a full game against
I
Detroit.
also think that they're playing a far superior defense against Detroit than they were at Green Bay. They got a much better pass rush. So that's another factor in this.
Right. I think the only
Um,
concerning thing is going to be the secondary. The secondary has
yeah,
been a problem for the Lions all season, and it showed
yeah,
in this game against Tampa Bay. They struggled to cover Mike Evans all
yeah.
day.
It
So
did. And I'm not saying that Debo Samuel is anything. He's not soft, but they don't
yeah,
have a target. There's no one of the size
you got Ayuk.
Of Mike Evans.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Ayuk is nice, but he's not Mike Evans.
No, I agree. I agree.
So there's give and take here and there, but it's all about how clean of a game you play. And hopefully, for in my hopes, because I cannot stand the 49ers, I really hope that Detroit goes in there and smacks the hell out of them.
We'll have to see. But before we go into the last game, I'll go back to the earlier comment where you said about the Lions, where you wouldn't have expected this. My first couple years watching football, one of the first years was that 0-16 Lions team. If you would have told me
Mm-hmm.
in about a 15-year span that this team would go from 0-16 to an NFC
Yeah,
title game, I would have agreed with you. I would have
yeah,
told you you're absolutely crazy. There's
yeah.
no chance because
It's
they're just cursed.
Yeah, and it's the pile of garbage up until they drafted Matt Stafford. It was the
Right.
pile of garbage they had playing quarterback for them. Dan Orlovsky not knowing
Joey
where he is on the
Harrington.
field. Joey Harrington, Scott Mitchell,
They
Eric
had
Kramer,
Dante Culpepper for a minute.
A washed up Dante Culpepper.
Yeah.
They've just had a dumpster fire at quarterback, and it's a shame because there were some nice players. They had Roy Williams from Texas, the wide receiver. They had, Megatron played through his prime. They played with a semi decent, good quarterback, but they had these amazing players, Barry Sanders, and they're just never able to
Get
get
over that
over the
hump.
hump.
Yeah.
It's astounding, but that's football.
And could this be the year they get over the hump? Maybe, but it's
Yeah,
certainly a good
it would be a
stepping
nice
stone if they
story.
don't. If they
Yeah.
don't, they still have plenty of years to do it because
Oh,
this could only be
absolutely,
the beginning for them.
absolutely, 100%.
But with the NFC side now completed, we now know it's going to be the Lions against the 49ers. We now have to find out the last team in the AFC. And I know a lot of people from Buffalo listen to the show. This one is going to sting a lot. Chiefs and the Bills in the final game of the divisional round. I don't like how Sean's laughing, right? So we're already off to
I'm laughing because I'm a Giants fan, and
the
it just
scenario of
seems
how this game
wide
happened.
right. Just continues to happen at Buffalo. It's amazing.
Let's break down this game in total. So obviously, this was a game. This was a fun game. First off, it was pretty much
Oh yeah,
back and
this
forth. No
great game.
defense being played whatsoever,
Yeah,
and especially in the first half. Josh Allen
yeah,
was easily
absolutely.
running, could do anything against this defense. Travis Kelce looked like the old Travis Kelce. When people were saying that he was kind of washed at this point in the year, he had a
Yeah,
couple touchdown receptions in this one. And it came down to realistically the fourth quarter. And that was when the game was decided. The Chiefs would score the only
yeah,
touchdown of that fourth quarter. The Isaiah Pacheco one, giving them the lead. But the fourth quarter was really, really unfortunate for the Bills, where a lot of things went wrong. They couldn't throw the football effectively, especially after, they didn't have Gabe Davis again going into this game. Khalil Shakir got injured for a little portion of this game as well in the fourth quarter. Did come back eventually on the final drive, but him missing for a little bit, it hurts because he was a big weapon for them down the stretch of the season. Diggs had a really up and down year, and he had a big miss, catch late in the fourth quarter, which really hurt them at the end of the day. You also had Josh Allen trying everything he can to at least get some yards, especially on the ground. They were even grateful on that last try to even have an opportunity to kick the field goal because if you remember,
yeah.
he fumbled on that third
Yes, he
down
did.
run, and by the Bills' recovery, and they had a fourth and short opportunity, they were able to convert later on, get down the field,
Yeah,
and get that field goal opportunity.
absolutely.
Um, People are pointing out a lot of things though on the drive. Allen had a second down play in which He had an under route to Stephon Diggs, could have thrown that to him, get the first down, or at least make it third and short. He throws it to Shakir in the end zone, try to get a touchdown. I understand it, both sides of the play there. So
Yeah.
it is what it was. Third down, they don't get the conversion, so they have to kick the field goal. And as you mentioned, unfortunately for the Bills, wide right happened again.
Yeah,
Tyler Bass missed the field goal to the
amazing.
right. I as soon as I saw that they put, and it was kind of unfortunate because they posted the stat before he went to go up a kick. He was 9 of 9 in the playoffs or whatever it was from a certain amount of distance from like 40 yards. And I immediately thought, I said, I swear he's gonna miss the kick now because they just brought the stat up. They do this
100%.
happens every single time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. He misses the kick. The Chiefs are able to get the ball back. They get a first down, just 2 plays to seal the game. And they're going to their 6th straight AFC Championship game as they hold on 27-24 over the Bills. Another heartbreaker for Buffalo. It's now the 3rd time in 4 years they've been eliminated by the Chiefs. And this one might sting. I would say I don't want to say it stings as badly as the one in 2021 did with the 13 seconds, but it's very much right up there with it because it seemed as if everything was going Buffalo's way. They won 6 in a row to end the year, won the division. They actually hosted the Chiefs this time, and at the end of the day, they could not capitalize in that fourth quarter to give them this win. And now they're going into another offseason where a lot of free agent decisions are going to have to be made. They're going to lose a lot of players considering the fact that Josh Allen's cap hit is going to go up now with this new contract. So they're going to lose a lot of players this offseason. So the Bills, I hate to even mention it, but you probably have to think that their window is, I don't want to say it's closed, but it's pretty much right at that capacity.
Yeah, it's like you said. I don't want to say it's closed, but like you said, it's almost there. They got to get creative, hoping that the scouting department can find guys deep in the draft. That remains to be seen. But I mean, when you talk about cursed franchises, I mean, we just went from Detroit, Buffalo. I mean, they seem to have like this amazing bad luck in the playoffs. That playoff game against Houston, they go into the locker room in that wild card game and they're up by whatever, and Warren Moon comes back driving down the field left, right, and center. And it starts with that. Then they go to the 4 straight Super Bowls and they can't shut the door on that. It's just year after year they do
Music
things.
City Miracle too.
The Music City Miracle. That was another game. They sat Doug Flutie for Rob Johnson. Who the hell is Rob Johnson? It's just these decisions that Buffalo makes. It's some of it is shooting themselves in the foot. Some of it's just bad luck.
They had that scenario in the fourth quarter where their offense couldn't move the ball on 4th down inside their own territory. They ran a fake punt, and obviously it didn't work. They got bailed out at the end of the day because Mecole Hardman fumbled into the end zone for a touchback. So it didn't cost them any points, but it realistically, in hindsight, should have costed them points. It probably could have ended the game right there for the Chiefs and for Buffalo. 100%. So it was just really mind-boggling what they did in the fourth quarter. It sucks because I really thought this was going to be the year that they finally get the boogeyman, the monkey off their back.
100%. I thought it would have been a great story to see, even though I picked Kansas City and Detroit to be in the Super Bowl. I thought it would have been a great story to see Buffalo and Detroit in the Super Bowl. Like, who the hell would have ever thought Buffalo and Detroit in the Super Bowl? I thought that would have been a great story.
Considering one of them will win their first ever championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it when there's 2 teams in the Super Bowl that's never won a championship. That to me is the most interesting.
That was kind of like the World Series. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's how the World Series was this year.
Yeah, 100%.
Even though the Diamondbacks won a title in 2001, it kind of felt like it was like,
it's been a while.
It's been a while. Not even that. That's not even the best comparison. The national championship was kind of like that too.
Yes, 100%.
It was like the first time since the 90s that one of those teams was going to win a title.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing those kind of things, Even back when I was in high school, Ohio State winning their first national championships, it's the 70s or whatever it was, or LSU, Nick Saban winning that national championship for the first time in the 50s. Those kinds of stories I think are great. I love those kinds of stories. But you kind of hit the nail on the head, missing a guy like Gabe Davis. That hurts. He's size, he's speed. You can't recreate that. In baseball, you can kind of recreate runs, you can recreate stuff with on base percentage and stuff like that, but you can't do that in football. There is no guy you can plug in, or two guys you can plug in that'll match a Gabe Davis. It just doesn't happen.
And
So
guess what? He's a free agent this season, so
there is a team I would love to see him go to, but I don't know if they'll do it.
probably not. Well, there is Buffalo connection, so you never know. We'd also have to get rid of some cap space. So,
there's other issues there. We'll get into that at another point in time.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to preview the offseason and what teams will need to do. Obviously, we did that last year with free agency, and obviously going into the draft, we'll preview that as well. I know you'll be on the show once again for our draft coverage this season. I'm already getting ready, excited for it. I think it's 90 plus days we got.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I love this part of the season. It hurts me because I know there's only, 2 more Sunday. Well, technically 3 if you want to count the Pro Bowl, whatever.
Go Eli.
It's kind of cool, I guess. Always go Eli. I love Eli. Yeah. I love Peyton too. The Manning family as a whole. I love the Manning family. But, 3 weekends of football left. As a football fan, this is like my steroids. It always pains me when the season's over, but we're going into like the most exciting part of the season, that the off season. It's just at some point, it's just like it's like a ticker on Wall Street. It just keeps going and going and going and going and going. It's great. It's kind of like the winter meetings at baseball. Those first couple of days, it's who's going where, who's going here. It's such a fun time, but
Yeah, so with the final 3 weeks now, we now know the final 4 teams in this NFL playoffs going into championship week. But before we can go into championship week, we do have some head coaching hirings that have happened these past couple of days. Yeah. We saw Antonio Pierce now being named the full-time head coach for the Raiders. So everyone here is pretty much excited about that. Because
I'm very excited.
Obviously, Sean and I are Giants fans, so we, obviously wanted to see him get hired after what he did with the Raiders. And Johnson was even, advocated for it a couple of weeks ago, because Pierce did a pretty solid job after Josh McDaniels got fired.
Yeah.
And the Raiders had a pretty good opportunity to make the playoffs towards the end of the season. So I'm curious. You go ahead.
I like the fact that they actually hired their interim coach this year. I kind of felt like they did Rich Bisaccia dirty. He had the locker room. My friend Dana at work, he's a huge Raiders fan. He said, why did we waste time with Josh McDaniels? We could have hired Bisaccia, and he thought it would have been great. So, hopefully for, my few Raiders fans, Big Al and Dana, I hope that this kind of works out. I hope you found your head coach now, because there's another franchise that seems to be snake bit for whatever reason. So,
I think the biggest thing for them now is they got to find their quarterback. That's the next big,
100%.
Biggest thing. Because
100%.
Obviously, you hoping you have the coach. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Devontae Adams yet, because there's still been those rumors of him getting traded or not. I don't know what they do with that yet. But they have an interesting draft coming up. They obviously have a new GM, Tom Telesco, who got hired today. The former Chargers GM is now their new GM. So he has an interesting decision to make, because do you trust O'Connell enough to be your starter? It didn't seem like that towards the end of the season. They kind of ran the ball into the ground most of those last few games of the year.
Yeah.
And they have Josh Jacobs, who we all know is one of the top running backs in the game. Zamir White did show some good signs for them as well of running. But it's tough because they're not in a position where they could draft one of these top quarterbacks in the draft. They would have to trade up if they want to get one, or they would have to settle on one of the other guys that are remaining. So
I can see, and I'm sure that he's not going to leave Minnesota, but I feel like this is another one of those destinations where Kirk Cousins would make a ton of sense.
It could,
but again, it all depends. And Telesco it's the best scenario they could have got with a general manager. He's built a winner that they've seen firsthand in I want to say San Diego, but in Los Angeles now.
No, you could say San Diego. I've said it so many times.
They're still San Diego. I kind of feel like they're San Diego. but again, it's culture.
He's
Like we
built a
talked about.
roster with the Chargers.
Yes,
The problem is he hasn't. The issue with the Chargers was they never hired the right guy to
right,
lead them because
right.
Staley was never the right guy to lead the Chargers
No,
at the
no,
end of the
no,
day.
no, no.
And
And
you're
again,
hoping
it's
Pierce is going to be that guy because it seemed to be
yes,
the way for the Raiders towards the end of the year.
yes. And it again, it's kind of like what I said with Dan Campbell. And I think that Antonio Pierce will do this there. It's creating a culture.
Yeah.
Not only just a winning culture, but getting everybody into that mindset. And he's won a Super Bowl with the Giants.
Yep.
So he's been there. He knows what it's about. So having that kind of person at the top, that's important. And again, like I said, like with Dan Campbell, you got to create that culture and have everybody buy in. And from everything I've read, everything you hear about, it seems that the players like him. The players have bought in.
Well,
so
considering Max Crosby threatened to request a trade if he didn't hire him, yeah, they definitely did.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. It's a great look for them.
They've definitely
like I said
bought
before,
into it.
They finally did the right thing. So you hope that he could continue to build on what they've done. But they're another team, like I said. It's almost as if they're a quarterback away in a sense.
Maybe.
But that remains to be seen. I mean, anything can happen from here on out. I mean, they could hit on one of these guys in the second round. Bo Nix could turn into be the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. You never know. So, it all depends on where they go from here, and not only just the right coaches, the right what your scouting department does. Can you find these guys? Your first round pick and maybe a second round pick are important, but hitting on your third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round picks are just as important. Depth is key, and you never know. One of those guys in the end of the draft might be a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, look at Brock Purdy. That's
absolutely. Brock Purdy is an example. Tom Brady is another example.
Yeah. So we'll see what the Raiders do these next couple of months with now Pierce being now the full-time head coach. But he was not the only man that was hired as a new head coach this week, as Brian Callahan, the former Bengals offensive coordinator, is now being named the new Titans head coach. So he replaces Mike Vrabel in Tennessee. Obviously, good success in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and company.
Yeah.
They went to a Super Bowl. We're very close to winning that Super Bowl. Now, there are some questions on how he'll do play calling wise, because there was, no one really knows if he was the play caller or if Zach Taylor was the play caller at Cincinnati.
Right.
So
right.
It remains to be seen what he can do with a full-time offense, but he goes into a unique situation in Tennessee. You obviously have Will Levis as your starting quarterback. You're going to have Tajay Spears as your running back, because it looks to be that Derrick Henry, in my opinion, is probably done with the Titans. So
I think
he's going into a rebuilding phase with this team. They're going to be doing a lot of cleaning house this offseason. A lot of, mainstays for that team are going to be leaving. You're probably looking at Levis, Spears, I guess to a sense still Treylon Burks as being your top offensive players, and just trying to build around those guys for the next couple of years and hopefully for the next decade. But I'm curious to see what it does for them.
It's a weird kind of thing, because I'm not convinced that they got better in the head coaching spot.
I think I like Vrabel a lot. I always gave Vrabel crap, but I think he's
like Mike Vrabel. He's a really good head coach, and it's interesting that the guys I listened to on the radio, Tiki Barber and Evan Roberts, both of them had said, Mike Vrabel got fired. Does this cause either the Jets or the Giants to say, hey, listen, this guy's available that we didn't expect to be available?
If they didn't have that clause in Jerome Mayo's contract for the Patriots, I thought for sure he's going to New England.
Oh yeah, 100%. For sure,
thought that was going to happen.
Yeah, I thought him going back to New England would have made sense, but he's a guy that no one expected to be available.
Yeah.
So not just the Jets and the Giants. It's every team that has a question mark at coach, and I'm not trying to say Dave's is a question mark. It just begs the question.
Yeah.
But
I get what you're getting at.
But any team with a question mark at a head coach, you have to think, the owner, the general manager have to sit in and have a discussion. Hey, this guy's available. He wasn't terrible in
right.
Tennessee. Should we, is it worth hiring him and getting rid of what we have?
Well, you got to think about the teams that right now are still looking for a head coach. You obviously have the Chargers, who seem to be kind of zeroed in on Jim Harbaugh. It looks like maybe they can get a deal done
I
sooner
think
rather
within
than
the
later.
next couple of days, Harbaugh will be over there
I guarantee you, Sean, it
in
will be
LA.
tomorrow on Wednesday
Yeah.
because every single
most
time
likely. Oh, yeah,
we
definitely.
record this show,
Definitely.
it happens on a Wednesday. If it's
Definitely,
baseball,
100%.
someone signs. If it's football,
100%.
someone. We had literally a show 2 weeks ago where we would stop recording the next day. Saban retires, Belichick's fired. Like we have like
a crazy, luck. It's crazy, and it seems that Belichick is all but hired
by
in
Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
So I mean,
so you have those two potentially all filled up, and then you still have Carolina, Washington, and Seattle still left open.
Yeah, I don't know where Vrabel goes. Vrabel kind of seems like what Belichick or Harbaugh would do. It seems that he's not going to want to go where there's a total mess, more complete roster.
Yeah, it's just I don't think he wants to do another rebuild.
Yeah,
because he kind of had to do that in Tennessee to begin with.
I think Carolina is an interesting spot, but
Seattle's
not having your
Seattle's the best
number one pick is Seattle seems to be the place to go.
I think to me for Seattle, it's either him or Dan Quinn. I've been zeroed in on Dan Quinn being the new coach just because he has ties with the Seahawks already. But maybe I could be wrong. It could be Vrabel. I think it's down to pretty much those two, in my opinion. And then
I don't know. I did hear something interesting on who was that? The guy you just mentioned from Dallas,
Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn. Maybe I was listening to Tiki and Evan a couple of days ago, and they basically said, does that loss to Green Bay kind of change everybody's minds on Dan Quinn?
It could.
Almost as if it almost seemed like Tiki Barber said it seemed like from his perspective that Dan Quinn was looking past this game. Whether they won or lost is irrelevant to him. It almost seemed that Dan Quinn was looking towards Seattle, and he really wasn't focused on the game.
He did the right thing.
Yeah,
he did the right thing. Don't help the Cowboys win.
Absolutely, 100%. He did the right thing. But does the performance of Dallas affect what everybody thinks about Dan Quinn?
Well, it really depends because the defense during the regular season was one of the better defenses in all the league.
No,
it's tough. It's a tough call.
It's a very interesting conversation.
So we'll see. But with all that being said, now all the NFL news and the recap's gone. We now go into the final segment of the show, and it's our usual segment of the show, the mushing hour. Where wins become wins become losses and losses become wins. Most of the time that happens for the show. Now, I would say I had a pretty good week last week. I was 3-1 in the divisional round. The only loss being, unfortunately, the Bills. Johnson, on the other hand, 1-3, not the best week, but he still leads the season series. His record is 80-69. My record is 79-70. So I have a 1-game difference between myself and Johnson going into this conference championship week. Sean, you're back on the show. Your first time picking since week 1. And believe it or not, you have the only 2 teams remaining. You have the only realistic Super Bowl shot, I should say, of happening with your Chiefs and Lions pick. Every single decision that we made is pretty much wrong.
It's amazing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is the first time since I think I was in 8th grade when I have said that. I think it was in, or maybe it was 7th grade when Denver and Green Bay played in the Super Bowl. That was the first time I actually picked the Super Bowl correct. I'm now 38. I haven't picked the Super Bowl correct in 20 plus years.
You're close.
So I'm really hoping for it this year, this upcoming week.
And to recap, the picks that we had, you obviously had your Kansas City Detroit pick. Grayson had Eagles and Chiefs. Obviously, one of those teams can still make it. The other team,
yes.
Bengals 49ers. Johnson still has that opportunity to get one of his teams in. The Bengals unfortunately had their Joe Burrow injury, And the same thing for me. I had Bengals and Eagles. Burrow gets hurt, and the Eagles, you lost to Tampa Bay. So I'm not sorry. That happened.
It was. I said it last week. I was hoping that the 49ers would lose. It would complete my perfect playoffs. But that first weekend of the playoffs, that was great.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just the best.
I said it was literally Christmas all over again. And then,
it was
obviously,
wonderful.
the Eagles have made their coordinator changes. Obviously, they now have it. They're looking for an offensive and defensive coordinator now for the second straight year. So
you said the Eagles.
The Eagles are in some rough times.
I'm kind of surprised, and maybe I shouldn't be, but it's another team that I could have seen them fire Nick Sirianni.
I think next year he's going to be on the hot seat. That's how
he has to be on the hot seat next year.
Johnson had said all year that he reminded them of the 2020 Steelers, and
100%.
I even said on the show, I said this might be worse than the 2020 Steelers just because of where they were last season and how the season ended this year. Of course,
yeah.
So now that all being said,
times.
No, it's great times for us. Tough times for
them. Tough times if you live in that godforsaken city in that godforsaken Commonwealth.
No disrespect to any people that are from Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, but
all disrespect to people from Pennsylvania and Philadelphia.
We're Giants fans. It's kind of tough to give any.
I'm also a Mets fan.
He is also a Mets fan. That's true. Yeah,
Philadelphia is. Philadelphia.
We'll just stop you right there. I think we know where we're going with that. Let's go into our picks for championship week. We have the Chiefs and the Ravens. The Ravens are at home. M&T Bank Stadium is going to be rocking for this one. A pivotal matchup between a team that's been in the championship game for 6 straight years now, and the Ravens are finally hoping to get over that hump. They haven't been to the championship game since 2012. I think that was the year they won. Correct me if I'm wrong. When they beat when they beat the Niners in New Orleans.
Yes.
They now host this game. A big matchup between the two. Baltimore is a 3.5 point favorite with the over under being 44.5 for this game. I'll go to you first, Sean, with this pick. Who do you like in this AFC Championship game? Do you stick with your original pick of the Chiefs to win to go on to the Super Bowl?
I do kind of have to stick with my original pick. I mean, if only just because this team has been there time and time again. Andy Reid seems to be the guy who's been in more NFC, AFC championship games probably than any other coach in modern football history. I know Johnson's not the biggest fan of Andy Reid, but I mean,
he was rooting for him on Sunday.
But he's got an impressive resume behind him. So, I'm sticking with Kansas City. They've been there. They've been on this stage. Baltimore hasn't been there yet. Harbaugh's been there yet. I don't think they have any players left on the roster from that Super Bowl team. If they do, maybe Justin Tucker.
Tucker probably is the only one.
But he's a kicker. Doesn't really. Right. Not that kickers don't matter, but
I'm trying to think. The only people that have experience that are Odell. I think Aguilar, was he on the Eagles team a couple years ago?
He might have been.
So I'm trying to think. He might have been. He had an opportunity. If he did win, I don't remember if not.
I don't remember if Mark Andrews was on that team.
He definitely was not. Mark Andrews definitely wasn't. They don't really have a lot. Patrick Ricard, I think, was a Niner in the Super Bowl when they played against them.
I think he was.
So I think you had that going. I mean, it's not really saying much, but there's not a lot of players on this Ravens team compared to the Chiefs that have the Super Bowl experience.
I mean, experience isn't necessarily indicative of who's going to win.
Yeah.
But Kansas City seems to, they're at that point in the fight where they're going knockout or nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, Kansas City is just. I can't pick otherwise. I don't really trust Baltimore.
Right.
They're a nice team. They got a very good defense, but Baltimore's young. So
what would be your pick for this game?
I'm going with Kansas City.
My money line or plus 3.5.
I'm gonna go points.
You go with the points, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Chiefs plus 3.5 is his pick. Now, Johnson is still here with us. He said he wants to make his pick, so I will allow him to make his pick right now.
Oh yeah, I don't have much of a voice, so I'm gonna keep this short and sweet.
All right, get it over with, Coach O.
Give me Chiefs plus 3.5 here.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so we already have our first mush. We have two people on the Chiefs. So, therefore,
brother.
I think it's very, inclined of me to take the opposite. I'm going to go with the Ravens minus 3.5 in this one. I think that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to defense, who wins this game. And I think the Ravens have the better defense of the two. The other issue I have with this game for the Chiefs is they had a lot of problems struggling against stopping the run, especially when it was the quarterback. They're facing the best quarterback when it comes to running in Lamar Jackson. The Chiefs' only hope is putting up a spy against him with a guy like Nick Bolton or someone like that to try to contain Lamar. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to hold him. If they also get Mark Andrews back for this game, that would be huge. And I think he'll, in one way or another, will suit up in this one. I got Baltimore going to the Super Bowl. Give me Baltimore minus 3.5.
Okay.
And then for the NFC side, we have the Detroit Lions going into Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers. The Niners are a 7-point favorite in this one, with the over-under being 50.5. Sean, who do you have winning this one? Do you stick with your Lions pick?
Yes, I'm sticking with Detroit.
So you're going to take them spread or money line? It's tough. It's a tough choice.
It is a tough choice. I'm going to go money line.
Wow. Okay. I would love to know what the odds of that are. I would have to look it up.
Yeah, they're a hungry team. They I'd say of the 4 teams left, they are by far the hungriest. Okay. They're the hungriest team right now, and
Detroit is a plus 260 money line.
As we saw with our Giants in 2008, hunger can drive a team to a championship.
Okay. Coach O, what do you got for us?
Give me Lions plus 7. I think that line's a little bit disrespectful. I think 49ers will win the game, but not by 7 points. Give me Lions plus 7.
Okay. I agree with the line being disrespectful. I think the Lions should not be a 7-point underdog in this one, especially how the Niners played the week before against the Packers. This will definitely be a close game. I think a lot of people are expecting this game to go over, I think, as well. So I'm going to be inclined to take the under. I kind of did that with the Packers and Niners game because people thought the exact same thing in that one. I think that happens in this one. I think we get, I'll say, let's go with a 24 to 20 final. I have the Niners winning this game. I would rather have Detroit win personally, but I think the Niners get it done, and we get a Christmas Day rematch between San Francisco and Baltimore for this year's Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So, not ideal, but we'll see. Maybe it's called the mushing hour for a reason. Maybe the opposite happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
For someone at least.
Hopefully.
Before we wrap up the show, I know Andrew has something that he would like to talk about that's happening this upcoming Saturday, the day of the Royal Rumble, by the way, Andrew. Don't forget that. But there is something else going on Saturday.
Before that Royal Rumble, and I'll keep this short and sweet because I cannot speak.
Yeah.
If we are feeling better, or if I am feeling better, we will be at the Woodbridge Card Show this Saturday at the Hampton Inn in Woodbridge, New Jersey. That's 370 Route 9 North, Woodbridge, New Jersey, 07095. 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. One of the biggest shows in Central New Jersey, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. Hopefully, Andrew's feeling a little bit better and going into that show. I know obviously Saturday is a huge day, not only with that card show, but as I mentioned, the Royal Rumble is Saturday. So one of our favorite days of the year, especially as wrestling fans. But
Royal Rumble's great.
Yeah, Sean would know too. He's another big wrestling fan. So we're all going to be looking forward to that Rumble on Saturday.
Yeah, but, very excited for that.
Before we wrap up the show, any final thoughts you guys have before we go into this final week before the Super Bowl?
I just hope my picks. I hope my picks make it.
Well, yeah, hopefully.
That's all I'm going on.
Say that every week.
And I can't wait for tomorrow when Jim Harbaugh signs with San Diego.
Yep. And don't worry, because we'll definitely we'll break that down next week, because I guarantee it's going to happen next week.
Of course.
I know you're having a tough time speaking tonight, but any final thoughts, Coach O?
Go Tigers.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's what I was hoping for. I appreciate that. But I appreciate you, Andrew, for hopping on despite the having the circumstances that you're currently going through. So I appreciate you being here for us, and I also appreciate you, Sean, for hopping on this weekend and helping us with being our guest host. And I'm sure
absolutely.
And I know we'll see you in a couple of weeks for our Super Bowl recap. And
yes,
as we mentioned earlier, the NFL draft is coming up not too far away. So we'll definitely be going into some offseason talk as well as previewing and doing our second annual mock draft this year on the All Gas No Break Sports Show. It's gonna be a fun one. We'll have some new tweaks to this year's show for the draft.
All right.
So we'll be definitely looking forward to that.
Definitely looking forward to it. Definitely looking forward to getting into my Mel Kiper thing. I might have to get one of his hair pieces, going on. But anyway, I'm very happy to be here. This is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to the next time.
Yep. So we'll see how this all unfolds. We have 4 teams left, 2 games on Sunday, and both will decide who will play in this year's Super Bowl. So we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here in this NFL postseason. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Once again, thank you, Sean, for joining us this week and recapping the divisional round matchups and also previewing our conference championship week. Now we'll see who goes on to the Super Bowl. We have the Ravens and the Chiefs, as well as the Lions and the 49ers. 4 teams to go. 2 will emerge as their conference championship winners, going on to this year's Super Bowl to play in Las Vegas. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by Andrew Johnson and Sean Mulligan this week for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.